be reintroducing POWERinU and myself in a few seconds. So hello everyone again. I'm Elaine Cercado. I'm one of the directors of POWERinU, and I welcome you to our complimentary webinar, The Simplicity, Elegance, and Effectiveness of Strengths. POWERinU, which has brought to you this complimentary webinar, is a training, coaching, and consulting company with the office in the Philippines and also here in Singapore. I'm based in Singapore. And we've been offering free webinars regularly for more than 2 years now, since January 2019. Our mission is to partner with organizations to enable them to deliver strong business results by enhancing their talent leadership through value-adding strategic consulting solutions. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Taffy Ledesma. Our speaker tonight has been an advocate of strength-based development for 14 years now as a manager, leader, and as a coach. He is a psychology graduate from De La Salle University and is one of the first Gallup certified strengths coaches in the Philippines. His background, however, was on business, not on HR, not on L&D or learning and development. This allows him actually to see the relevance of strengths from both perspective of people development and delivery of business results. Our speaker's career started in marketing and sales, working for Unilever, Me Johnson, and Johnson & Johnson in various roles in Southeast Asia region. He then did coaching and consulting for various local and multinational corporations. Most recently, he has taken on general management roles, serving as managing director for DDB Indonesia, a multinational advertising agency. And today, he works for the Hello Health Group, a regional health tech platform, as country manager for Indonesia. And so Taffy is based in Jakarta. So everyone, let us welcome our speaker, Mr. Taffy Ledesma. Taffy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. I will just stop my video and let you take the spotlight.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I see some familiar faces. So hello to everyone. I'm trying to project my slides. So first and foremost, good evening. I hope this finds you guys safe and your family safe. So thank you to Elaine and the POWERinU team for inviting me to share what I know about this. So I'd like to introduce myself based on my strengths profile. So if you know the Clifton Strengths or the book Strengths Finder, anyone can actually get access to their strengths profile by purchasing this book or going online and getting an assessment. It's very inexpensive to find out something that's really valuable. To me, it was a game changer in my professional life and my career. So I've actually been a user of strengths for close to 15 years, even before I became a coach. So I'm on my 6th year as a coach, but I'm on close to like 15 years as a user of strengths. So I use this in my roles as a business leader, as a manager, as a brother, as a friend. So I also do coaching. I also did some coaching for young adults and parents and their children. So my profile is this: strategic, ideation, communication, developer, and maximizer. So I guess this is why I find myself here speaking with you guys, right? And I'm an advocate of strengths, even if I don't make my day job is not about strengths coaching. So I do it on the job. So what I'd like to take you through today is this agenda. Number one, it's a bit about strength-based development, how it's simple, how it's effective, and hopefully I can share a bit of info with you guys on how you can apply it to your workplace and to your life. So to begin, so I'd like to begin with two case studies. Excuse me. The first question that I wanted to pose to the group is: can a person excel in certain areas given ample training? So this is the hypothesis of, as long as you get the right training, you can be great at anything. And sometimes we like to think that way. So this study goes back to the 1950s, looked at that assumption. So in the US, in the state of Nebraska, they did a study on reading. They wanted to empower everybody or their students with better reading. So they tried different methods, right? So this graph shows us that at the beginning of the study, when they took a baseline, they separated the groups. They were able to separate the groups in those who read as average readers, and they also identified fast readers, people who were reading way faster than the norm. So they did three different kinds of interventions. And what they realized was the average group, after training them, teaching them, giving them exercises on how to read faster, they increased from 90 words per minute to 150 words per minute. But those who read already naturally fast at 350 words per minute, their performance grew almost 10x. In another related study, so that's individuals, right? So fast readers, given the right training, actually read faster. Now, okay, let's look at a different scenario. In this case, the UK in the 80s. So there's a group in the UK that managed pubs or bars. And what they realized was, when these bars and pubs started to decline in sales, in performance, it coincided with also the premises getting worn down. So what did they do? They would refurbish, renovate, put a new carpet, fix the furniture, give it a do-over, and productivity would rise 15%. So usually the refurbishing would begin with the weakest or worst performing bars, right? And so somebody asked, why don't we refurbish the ones that are selling the best? So they agreed to do this. They took a sample of the worst performing, the lowest performing pubs, 8 of them, and 8 of the highest performing pubs, and both did renovation and checked the results. So what happened here? Here, so they checked the profitability after refurbishing. The low volume pubs would do not this much, but in relative scale, the already high performing pubs, when renovated, would be 7 times more profitable. And 7 times more profitable is over a much higher hurdle if you're a business person. You're already high and then you still exceed. So what is to be learned from these two examples? In both cases, researchers found out that it was the raw material that was actually a clue to the better performance. So in reading, the one who was naturally gifted at reading, when investing in talent, in their reading talent, through practice, through training, would grow multiples and multiples higher in their proficiency. Now, the next one, in the pubs, what they realized, what was the secret to a great pub? Was it always location? What they found out was it was the staff. The staff who would attend well to their customers, who would know them, who would be friendlier, they'd serve faster. So the staff working in a renovated pub, a great staff in a renovated pub, would outdo a bad staff in a renovated pub as well. So the lesson learned here is when we determine where we're naturally strong and we invest in it, we yield the greatest returns. I remember when I was younger, my mother would say, "Oh, you love to talk a lot. You're very talkative." So I was labeled as a talkative person. And funnily enough, I introduced myself, right? Communication was in my top 5. And from that time that my own parents labeled me as talkative, I become a speaker professionally through these seminars. I got into a field that's about communication. I did marketing. Um, I do church talks as well. So sometimes where your natural gifts are, that's the clue to where you will find tremendous success. And this actually proved it. So I'd like to talk about strengths-based development and the assumptions behind it. Right. So there are many schools of thought on development and performance, but mine is strengths-based today. So what are 3 assumptions that strengths-based development makes? Number 1, only some behaviors can be learned. This includes skills, things that you can read or get trained for. For instance, I cannot play the piano. I've tried maybe twice, 3 times, 3 different occasions in my life, and I don't know how to do it. Meanwhile, there are some people who just put their hands on a keyboard and within a few hours of practice, they can play something. I cannot. The second assumption is the best in a role deliver the same outcomes, but using different behaviors. There are some business leaders in this group or leaders who are exposed to a lot of very high performers. You will see that your 2 best salesmen or 2 best basketball players that you know, they deliver the results in different ways. And that is true in the workplace. That is true in business, in acting. Right? They deliver the same outcomes using different behaviors. And the last one is my favorite. It says weakness fixing prevents failure, but strengths building leads to success. Where do we see this? We see this a lot in management. We're afraid to, manager myself, right? Managers are afraid to get things wrong. And that's why we're always fixated on weaknesses. But getting things right through strengths building leads to success. So just a bit of definition of terms, right? Talent and strength. Sometimes they're interchanged, but I'd like to talk about it now. A talent is innate. It's in you, it's unconscious. It's a naturally occurring pattern of how you think, how you feel, or how you behave. That can be productively applied. So there are no talents. A talent that cannot be productively applied isn't a talent at all. So then if a talent is this natural pattern that just so happens to be in your nature, what is a strength? A strength is an ability to consistently produce positive outcome through near perfect performance in a specific task. So you ask, how are they connected? You start with talent, but you finish with strength. So an investment in your talents will eventually lead to strengths that leads you to great performance. Right? So I just wanted to make that clear upfront today that if you want to be strong, look towards your talents because there lies your greatest chances to be successful. So at the beginning of the webinar, we sent out some poll questions. And Trina, if you're there, would you like to share the results of this survey? Okay, here you go. Oh, nobody answered yet, but it's okay. Let's keep this poll out, and I'll just go straight to the next slide. Do you mind hiding this? Oh, there you go. Right. Here we go. Oh, so people are voting. Right. Okay, we have 30 seconds. Oh, okay, 30 seconds. All right. See us spattering. Actually, this poll, I'm glad that you're participating. That means that you're listening at the very least. Um, they conducted this poll in among parents in the US. And it's a very interesting question, right? If your child came home with the following grades, which subject deserves the most attention from you? Obviously, it didn't ask if you focused on one, you wouldn't focus on the rest. It didn't ask it that way. It's just that as parents, I'm a parent myself. Focus means time. So in other words, the question would be, uh, if you were to give your time, where would you give your time and thereby attention? So these are the results. Let me go on to the next slide. Um, Trina, wait, let me unshare this first and close this. Right. I'll close this and then here. So when the results came out, 80% of parents said the F in algebra. It's very eye-opening, and I saw also the scores, right? It's almost like a tie between the A and the F. It's like a lot of our systems today are prone to be remedial, right? Fixing weaknesses. To be honest, I always struggled with math. And I would get tutoring for math when I was, in grade school. Um, but I all that tutoring never got me to like head of the class. I was never like in the top 25%. Um, but in things like public speaking, I would always be without practice. I would always come out as one of the higher ones. So while my parents were focusing on my weakness, it was almost natural for me to shine in areas where I was strong. But what this only illustrates that we are prone or trained to look at where we are weak or where others are weak. Oh, there you go. Rather than where we are strong. So yes, so there are a lot of work to be done. So why strengths actually? So the Gallup organization who conducted this, who owns Strengths Finder, right, and Clifton Strengths, about 30 million people have taken it now, based on a study a few years ago of, I think, a sample size of, in the hundreds of thousands, that people who use their strengths every day, is top left box, show productivity of 7.8% higher than those who don't. If you're a business leader, right, and the resignations, employee turnover is very high, the upper right box also tells a story. 15% lower turnover. What I love is, I run a small team here in Indonesia, is the lower middle box. Teams who received strengths feedback have 8.9% greater profitability than those who don't. It's amazing. So I could hit profit targets better by giving strengths feedback. That's amazing. I didn't need to do a price increase. I didn't need to launch a high value line. If I just gave strengths feedback, my chances of improving my profitability is higher. So for those who are business leaders right now, this is almost like, what a tool to have. Even with productivity, I could get 8% out of the team without having to add another person, just by teaching them to use their strengths. So from a business perspective, it's a really great situation. It's really great deal. So it's really simple. The simplicity of strength is invest where you're strong, you get better results. But let's talk about its effectiveness. So I want to share with you a case. This is an actual case of a group that I helped out for strengths. So the manager came to me, and the leader of the team said, I'm newly promoted. I took my boss's job. I'm promoted from within. So now my peers are now under me as a manager. And we just so happen to be behind our target by we're only 85% to where we're supposed to be. So this was a big IT sales group. They were in charge of 50% of their company's revenue. So big stakes. And they were behind target. So, and we had a new leader. So he said, okay, I want to do something for my team. You do strengths. Why don't we talk about it? Why don't you share with my team? So I'll share you how their team was set up. It was set up as one person handling a different account. So it's a sales team, right? One person, one account, maybe two people, one account. So they were working independently in different teams, and then you just add up the numbers, and that's their team target, right? Very little synergies. Their main source of support was their manager. So each of these guys, they talk, hey boss, can you help me with my proposal? Hey boss, can you help me with this client? And basically as a team, they were just a collection of individuals, right? You work on your own, and they had varying levels of success. Maybe the guys who were longer in the company would have better sales effectiveness. Their performance was better, but collectively they were behind, as you could see here. So we did, over a span of four months, we did 2 sessions, but but this one was a unique case because so they did a strength discovery. So all of them took the test, the assessment. We talked about all their strengths, so their talents. We shared with one another, and their manager said, let's do this. Now that we know where each other is strong. So there was someone who's very good with people, interpersonal skills, interpersonal talents. There's another person very good analytically. There's some person who was very good in execution, getting things done, making very good progress charts and on how to move ahead. So the leader said, let's do this. Every Tuesday, I'm going to assign this meeting room for you guys to sit with each other and borrow from each other's strengths. And after that, we did another session to refine that. So what had happened is they started using the time to sit with each other in the room. So I remember there's one guy who's very analytical, very organized in his thinking, but was very ineffective in interpersonal relationships. And he had an opposite colleague who was not very great at structuring plans, but was very effective in the office, very good interpersonally. So they started consulting each other. And the person with low interpersonal talents, but high analytical, would help the person with low analytical and high interpersonal craft her plans. In turn, the one who was being helped to craft plans would help him with his clients, with internal customers, to say, hey, you know what? This is how you approach this person, this is how you approach that person. So they started to collaborate. They started to ask each other. They started to partner. And this is what happened next. So they started working interdependently. They saw each other as a source of support. They're like, oh, I can lend you this from my set of gifts, and you can lend me what you have and I don't have. So they started working together. And it was supported by this process of this once a week, this meeting room is open. I use a picture from the X-Men because the boss was an X-Men fan, and they have this room called the War Room. It's like their control command center. So he called it the War Room. It's not very appropriate today, but he called it the War Room. And that's where people would meet. And so they started appreciating each other. And at the end of the year, you could see the results from being behind target in the first half, and in only a few months exceed the full year target with an effective growth of something like 124% over the first half. It's amazing. And that person who was low in interpersonal but high in, and he got promoted. He finally got his promotion, and the person he was helping achieved 168% to target that year. And as you can see, the team did really well. So it's really a case for the effectiveness of strengths. They did not have any new products to launch. Their product pipeline was the same as in the first half, but they got so much out of their team. This for me is really a golden case for what happens when strength is applied. But often it doesn't happen this way. And I even have a cartoon strip for it from Dilbert, our favorite office comic strip. Like, so during the performance review, boss says, "Tina, you lack confidence." And she goes on, "That's because you keep criticizing me. Nice leadership, you inspiring pile of pound cake." Right? If you focus on the left, the first box, it often happens like this. Let's just look at if there are HR people here, this happens. So let's talk about unproductive and disempowering performance reviews. Right? So what happens during these performance reviews? The objective is not really it's a scoring. Yeah, it's a scoring. It's a time to keep score, to grade you. And more often than not, it focuses on how the manager wants the employee to behave. So this is how it will start. "So, Taffy, you did a good job, but there are some areas where you're lacking." And then the manager goes on to talk about it. "Yes, and where you're lacking, you could be more assertive. I don't see you being so assertive. You should speak out some more. And because you don't speak out, nobody listens to you." So it goes on and on this way, right? But what it is, it's a missed opportunity actually to find out what is the employee good at and how we can maximize. So we lose that opportunity because it's a one-way conversation. And it's not a good use of time for the manager because obviously the manager is focusing on what's wrong, giving his or her ideas of what can be done right based on his or her, I guess, natural, what he or she believes is right. Okay? It becomes a style conversation more than it becomes a results conversation. So what's that? If you're trying to change someone's style and that's not their style, with the assumption if they change their style, they will achieve the results, that could be a big waste of time for the manager because they're not going to get the results because they're wired differently. It's a big waste of time for the employee because, well, I kind of know where I'm not strong already. So how do we get this into a performance discussion? So if you look at it, if you break up, let's say 1 hour, you have 1 hour to talk to an employee, or you're an employee, your boss gives you 1 hour. Often 30 minutes of that time is spent on what you're doing wrong. Maybe 10 minutes of the 1 hour is what you did right. 10 minutes of the boss trying to give you hacks or tips. You should try this. You should, when you present, make sure your back is straight, or you project your voice, or you prepare in advance. So does that really drive performance? That's my question. I mean, it's well-meaning, but how many bosses do that or don't prepare? And another one is, what was great about how you What is great about your results, how your strengths drove the results, right? Maybe 10 minutes, 10 minutes on that, right? A bit of 20 minutes of what you did right, and then 40 minutes of what you did wrong. But I'd like to offer a more productive way, a more empowering way that will lead to better results. I would say empower and hold them accountable, because I don't have time as a leader to think about all their weaknesses. I just want them to do better. And sometimes when I was much younger, I would be misguided to say, if you do it my style, you'll get better. You'll deliver the results. But we all know every person is different. Everybody comes with a different set of talents. So the job of the manager is to uncover and direct those talents so they can turn into strengths. So as the great Stephen Covey of the 7 Habits says, you can't hold someone accountable for results if you supervise their methods. So what's the objective here? The objective is, how do we get better results? By empowering the employee, but holding them accountable, not making excuses for them. Next, it's a discussion of what's going right so we can find clues in things we can magnify or multiply to achieve more. And the question would be, how can you use your talents and strengths better, more creatively, intentionally, so you can achieve more? So that goes back to the employee. For instance, Taffy, it says in your strengths profile, and I see it, that you are high in ideation. So how could you use that to build better plans? It also says you're high in developer. How could you use your developer intentionally to make sure that the people who report under you actually rise up to the next level faster than initially scheduled? So now the conversation, if pretend that was my boss talking to me, the conversation now goes back to someone and says, yes, you have the tools. How do you make the most of the tools to drive better performance? That way, the boss is a thinking partner. The manager is a thinking partner. The person is accountable for the results, but is directed to an area where they are naturally strong. It's very efficient. So in these conversations, you just ask them, okay, your performance is here. How is it that we use your strengths to get your performance from here to even here? Such an empowering discussion, because you're not telling them where they're weak. Or maybe you have a conversation. What is it about your natural tendencies that could even be hindering your performance? So we learn how to regulate when to bring it out. So in this case, wouldn't it be great if we talk about the 40 minutes instead of talking about where you were wrong, or what you did wrong, or what you're not doing the way the boss wants you to do it? Is why not talk about how to maximize strengths and how to study more how your strengths or talents influence your results, and so it can be repeated, and so it can be magnified. I'm just going to do a quick time check. Okay, all right. So that's a difference in basic philosophy, right? In running a performance review. But how do we apply it some more? The strength to apply strengths in daily life, and in the workplace, very easy. Number one, you have to first discover. So take an assessment, show it to people you know, ask people how these things are interpreted in your life. For example, talkative versus communicative. I'm also high in ideation. Ideation, do you have ingenuity, or are you a daydreamer? I've been labeled a daydreamer in the past. Next is to identify. This is now personal. Identify, where does this show up in my past success? When I achieved this and I did really well, can I actually see where my talents play the part and how they play the part? So it understands also, when do we get into trouble for excessively using our natural abilities. I'm talkative, but there's a time to be quiet. I love ideas, but there's a time to commit to a route and to stop ideating and start doing. The next bit is to appreciate, right? This is for us to acknowledge that, yes, I have tools. They are not, the talents are neutral. They're neither good nor bad. It depends on how they're applied. And now I know how I can make a contribution to a bigger goal or to my performance. And this is where a manager, if you have a manager, has to appreciate where their subordinate is strong. And lastly, apply. How do I intentionally use my talents to deliver the results? How do I partner in an area where there is a missing talent in my set, and I could find someone who can complement me and we could synergize and deliver the results? So, you know what? The easy example here is when we were much younger and we would organize like a party with friends. Right? You'd invite people to the house. Instinctively, among our friends, we would know who's going to do the cooking, who's going to do the buying of the, if you're cooking, if you're going to buy ingredients and supplies, who's going to do that. Instinctively, you know who does the inviting, and you would know during the party or event itself who would be like the PR person. Instinctively, we know. And you would never volunteer someone who was disorganized to do the groceries. You would never ask the shy one to invite people. It's just so intuitive, actually, outside the workplace, right? So this is the cycle. We discover our talents. We identify where they showed up in our past success. We appreciate them and own it, and own that this is the way I can make a contribution. And next, we apply them with intention. So the next slide is when you're discovering only, it's just a period of self-awareness. It's almost like this is my state of being. I acknowledge my talents. It's naturally occurring. It happens without me thinking, right? But here it's just basic awareness. It's just, how am I wired? How is this John wired? Is he organized? Is he does he like being around people or few people? Does he have immense focus, or does he like ideas? Does he analyze, or she analyze, or does she just feel through things? So that's a state of being, right? We just understand. But the mature thing to do, so you're aware, okay, I'm like this, I know. That's step one. The bigger step is moving into a state of doing. Here, we take what we know about ourselves and we intentionally use it. For instance, how can I use my ideation? And this, I've used this, and this is a true example. How can I use an ideation to take care of my mother's medical? My mother is she has health issues, right? So how do I manage her doctors and her nurses while I'm away, and I'm in another country? My mother's in the Philippines. So I use my ideation to say, it can be done. Why don't you use your ideation? If I'm creating like at work, if I'm trying to sell a plan, how can I use my ideation plus communication to develop a plan that actually gets the support of management and investors, right? So you want to move from being aware to applying it, because it's performance-based. So the state of doing is you apply now your talents to achieve goals. You just don't say, I'm like this, but I am this so that I can achieve. And the goal here is to hold yourself accountable, to bring your natural gifts to drive to the performance outcome you want. So from awareness to accountability, from a state of being, I am like this, to a state of being, to a state of doing, I can achieve because I am such like this. It's very simple. So, I know there are a few students on the call and you're at the university. Even the way you do your schoolwork or your projects or trying to finish your degree, you can always look at your talents, take an assessment, look at your talents, say, how could I use this to achieve my goals? That way, you're never out of solutions. Because when you say, oh, I'm not like that, I'm not like this, then you focus on what you don't have and what you can't get. As opposed to when you have a talent, you focus on what you do have and what you could get because of it. Or if it's really difficult, then partner with someone who will complement you. So in a nutshell, for organizations, why is it so simple, so effective, so elegant? And how do you make it happen? So that you create a language of strengths, so that you can hold people accountable to bring their natural talents every day. It's simple. Number one, make sure everybody knows what their talents are and share it out with everybody. The company Pfizer, it's a very big drug company. In their email signature, each person has their top 5: ideation, strategic, communication, maximizer, developer, in their email signature. So now everybody knows. So they don't need to label them as, oh, that person is talkative or that person is rigid. Now, oh, that person has communication. That person is deliberative, has deliberative in their top 5. And then okay, so that's level 1. Number 2, train managers to create work plans for their employees or staff and put them to match with their strengths. So let the employee take care of the how, and the manager make sure that they focus on the what and hold the employee accountable to their own natural gifts. And lastly, do accountability checks. So instead of performance reviews where you're grading, you're having strength discussions in light of a performance review. So yeah, so it's kind of simple. There's no fancy tools. It just takes a little bit of time investment to understand your own talents and the talents of those around you. So I leave you guys with this quote. It's from Don Clifton. He was actually a pioneer in strengths and positive psychology. And he asked the question, what will happen when we think about what is right with people rather than fixating on what is wrong with them? And in my experience, every time that I focus on what is right with people, they tend to want to do more. They tend to want to achieve more. And when you focus excessively on what's wrong with them, they tend to get disempowered, disheartened, and eventually they go or they quit. So I hope my short talk tonight has enlightened you or given you a bit of thought to consider. And I think we'll open it up for questions. So Elaine, Trina, that's it for me, and I shall stop sharing my screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taffy. Wow. What a great short talk, on the strengths, maximizing your strengths to deliver work. Excellent work. So start with talents, finish with strength. So while we're waiting for the participants here to type in their questions, I'd like to thank you, Taffy, on behalf of POWERinU Philippines, the whole team, and I'm sure all of us here listening, participating in this webinar are very grateful for the time and the inputs that you have given. Very, very useful, very relevant, and very enlightening, actually. So it's a again, I think all of us, be it at home, you said we can apply it, be it in school, at work, we can apply all these learnings. So let me start. Actually, we only have about 10 minutes left. And so I'd like for our participants to start typing in their questions. But let me just start it and ask, what if my strengths are not appreciated by my boss?
That's a very good question. I I've been in a situation where that has happened. I think the main reason why a boss might not appreciate your strengths is because maybe the boss has a filter of his or her own on what profile will will lead to success. Remember,
Mhm.
a lot of these people are very
Experience.
experienced. They've experienced their success based on their success formula.
That's right.
So what I would say is encourage them to take an assessment or
Mhm.
show them your assessment. But it's also the on the employee to convince their manager that, look, I delivered this because of this talent, because of this strength.
Mhm.
So open their eyes to so they can appreciate it.
Mhm. Okay. So, are there specific strengths for specific jobs? Do you need to have certain talents or strengths for certain jobs?
That's a very good question. Yeah, short answer. I'll give you the very extreme answer. For instance, you wanted to take a job in the hospitality industry and you wanted to be a frontliner, meaning you wanted to be at the front desk, guest relations. But if you don't like speaking to people, it's very difficult. It can be done, but um, it will take a lot of effort on your part, and sometimes that can be very draining.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. If a person who loves interpersonal interactions, who loves interactions, is at the front line, time
Mhm.
will feel like it passes by, like they're having fun. Like a
Mhm.
person who likes to be very focused can read an entire book, and it will feel like time had just
Yeah.
gone in 1 second. 1 hour
We don't
feels like
notice
1 minute.
time. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So when we're passionate about something, right? And when we love our work, as they say, it doesn't feel like work. And so
Mm.
that's I think a lot of people can relate with that. Reversely, if we don't if we don't use our strengths, or if there's mismatch, I guess it really feels like a burden, isn't it?
But let me be, I'm not an idealist, I'm a
Mm,
realist. We know that there's a lot of things that we don't really like doing at work.
mhm.
I think the goal is, how can I do a lot of what I love doing to get the result, so that I have the energy to do the things that I don't like doing, or I don't necessarily like doing.
Well
Does that
said.
make sense?
Yeah.
You have to
Thanks,
fill
Taffy.
up your energy in order to do the things that are more like a grind to you.
Mhm. So the energy boosters and the energy drainers,
That's right.
or whatever you call them. I We do have questions coming in, Taffy. I'd like to read them off from the chat. They were sent through our technical producer Trina. As a manager, how can we balance the interests of management to the expectation of the employee? Very good question. Thank you.
I love that question. Number one is, how do we balance? The way I look at it is this. I will be very blunt. The Your employer has a commercial objective. They have goals, right? They hire people so that they can achieve those goals. So what is the balance? The balance is, I speak now from the part of general management, right? The balance is, I have to, if I look at you as a resource, right, as a talent, how do I put you in a position where I can get the most out of you? So how do I balance it? If I'm looking at my team and there's someone from my team here, I would say I will put that person where that person is most likely to succeed, because that gives the biggest return. So it's a very mature, sort of not a cookie cutter way of
Mhm.
approaching things. But if you want to get the best out of your employees so that you can get the best revenue or profitability or productivity, then you have to put them in a place where they're naturally strong.
Yeah. And if they win, you win.
If they
As,
win,
as
you
my
win.
former boss would always say, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Or please do not underestimate that when people resign a lot, there's so much business disruption, and that is not profitable.
Exactly. So the other question here, there's actually four more questions. Hopefully, we
Sure.
have time to cover everything. How can you develop your communication skills and confidence when you haven't worked for a while?
Oh, very good question. I went through that. Um, I went through a phase where I was, yes, doing consulting, but it was not every day. So I kind of, what I would do is, because your talents always show up. So whether you're a house band, and I was, whether you're a manager, and I am, or you can always hone yourself. And when you start using your talents with intention and they become strengths, whether that's planning a family vacation or attending to someone who is sick, um, you will know that you're getting stronger.
Mhm,
Most of the time I was not working, I was taking care of my sick mother. And I was very proud of what I was able to accomplish, like
mhm,
orchestrate a team of doctors.
mhm,
And that I wasn't paid for that,
mhm.
but I built my confidence.
Yeah. There's, every moment could be a learning opportunity, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Especially in life situations like those.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
How about weaknesses? How could I convert it to something positive?
That's a
That was a
great
question.
that's a great question. So I didn't get to define weakness. What is a weakness? A weakness is either a strength misapplied, a talent misapplied, or a talent that is lacking to perform a specific task. For instance, if you're supposed to be an accountant and you're supposed to, or no, a physicist, right? Let's say you're a physicist and you're really bad at math, that is a weakness in that situation. But if you were, let's say, a fireman, and your job, the skill did not depend on your mastery of arithmetic or geometry or calculus, then no problem. It's not a weakness. So it is situational. So how do
Mhm.
you turn it into a strength? I would say this: if you can't dance, don't dance.
Sounds logical. It's actually most logical, right? Okay. Thank you, Taffy, for that one. And I think I'll just have to limit it now to the last two questions. Sorry about that. But if you do have questions, please send them in by email or private message it to Trina, POWERinU Philippines, so that we can perhaps ask Taffy to help answer even after this webinar. How do you identify employee weaknesses so that the manager can help? Sorry. How do you identify employee weaknesses and develop it to be a strength? Okay, so that was a
Well,
question.
well, number one, as I said, right, a talent misapplied or something that's missing in a skill, the performance will tell you a big story, right? Say, sit down with the employee and say, why are you having difficulty attaining this, right? So oftentimes it's because a person might think that this is how I should do things, rather than allow you to get to the result based on the natural tools you have. And I always use the example of the X-Men, right? The X-Men, the superheroes, when you need to
Mhm,
kill someone, you put Wolverine in front.
mhm,
When you need someone to lead and organize, you put somebody else in front.
yeah.
So over the course of, as a manager, over the course of the year, you'll see where a person is, where's the performance low. Then ask, then check for style. Then
Mhm,
when you liberate them from style and empower them with talent, then you check again. But if
mhm,
it's really something that there's a competence issue or skill needs, then you have to either intervene, move that person to another role, or ask
mhm,
that person that maybe this is also not the role for you. Maybe
mhm.
you cannot be a superstar in this role. Maybe you can be a superstar elsewhere.
Mhm.
It's a
Thank
mature
you.
conversation to have.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Taffy. And I'm afraid that's all we've got. There are a couple more questions here that I'm sorry. It's time, and I know time is very precious to everyone. And so, what we'll do, as I promise, and as we have done in the past, is that take these questions and ask Taffy to provide quick answers by email. Send them to you when we send a recording of the webinar. Again, thank you so much, Taffy. I do have a couple of screens that I just want to show as a closing. Trina,
I'll
if you
go.
can just show it. And so I'd like to, so thank you so much, Taffy. And I hope everyone enjoyed that webinar talk by Taffy. It's really amazing how he can pack so much within 30, 45 minutes, right? So amazing, amazing learning, wonderful learnings, Taffy. And so what you can see now here is our next webinar on May 4th by Lisi Puno, who's a counseling psychologist. And very interesting topic again, up close and personal, strengthening relationships post-pandemic. We would like to invite you to register right after this. The webinar is on May 4th. And you could see when you register, you will see all the details about this webinar. But it's, again, a very timely or relevant topic, the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown, of course, which in Philippines and other countries are still experiencing, inadvertently led to the blurring of lines between personal and professional lives and relationships. And so studies have shown that some people have felt overwhelmed, anxious, and stressed, and which might have led to relationships being tested or strained. And so some welcome the situation, being together with family, which fed joy, support, and positivity to their emotional bank account. But where are you in that situation? Can you relate to both situations? So join this webinar to discover a relationship vision that will make your relationship stronger and discover ingredients that can allow you to reconnect with your partner and family members. And so that's the first announcement. There's just one more announcement that we'd like to show as well. This is on our organizational restructuring program that we offer to you together with AAI Consulting and Gentem Consulting. If you can just go to the next one, Trina. This is in regard to redesigning and rebuilding your organization's blueprint to success. And so you could see on this flyer or this slide all the services that we offer. And so I'd like now to also ask you to take 10 seconds to answer this two-question poll. So we would like to continuously improve our webinar content, delivery, and services. And I'd like to just ask you to take these 10 seconds and answer this question. Two questions only. And of course, we take this seriously. And so we'd really like you to provide us feedback. Okay, Trina, I think it's blocking the QR code. So if you can just let it there for the moment. Okay, so again, everyone can access the recording of this webinar through our YouTube channel. We do have Team POWERinU YouTube. We have our website, of course, www.powerinu.com.ph, and our Facebook page where some of you have watched. We'd like to again invite you to the next webinar and to view our website for all other announcements into the future. And so we exceeded by a couple of minutes, but I believe it's all worth it. Again, Taffy, thank you so much, dear friend. Thank you, Taffy, for sharing your expertise, your experiences, your inputs, very enlightening. And we'd like to thank everyone who tuned in tonight for our webinar. And that's all we have for tonight. Join us again next time. Thank you. Good night. Good evening. This is Elaine Sarcado again with POWERinU. Bye.